I was the first to notice an extra person had joined our group. I counted 6 of us sitting around the campfire, but I knew we had left home with 5. The 6th person had joined us somewhere along the way, but where and when exactly, I could not be sure. All the glowing faces looked familiar, like I had known them all for a lifetime. That was why it took so long to find the man out of place. I had to go through the faces one by one. I went through my history with them, recounting how I met them, how I knew them. I fit each one into my memories like puzzle pieces. First, there was Mark. He was sitting next to Sarah, chatting her up as always. I met Mark and Sarah 6 years ago in the 10th grade. Mark and I played wide receiver together on the school football team. Sarah was a cheerleader, and Mark always had a thing for her. The 3 of us started hanging out after games. Mark flirting nonstop, and Sarah always hilariously rebuking him after a while. Then there was Ben. We had been best friends since the 1st grade, inseparable ever since we bumped heads playing tag during recess. He had his arm around his longtime girlfriend, Justine. She started at our school when she moved from Chicago in the 7th grade. Ben sat next to her in English, and soon she became a part of our group at the time. She was quiet and shy when she first arrived. But once we got to know her, she opened up. She was one of the coolest and nicest people you could ever get to meet. She had also become close with Sarah in the past few years. And then there was the 6th face, the piece that did not fit. I stared at him, and his name escaped me. That is, if I ever had it in my memory banks in the first place. He looked familiar, but I could not place him in my memories. But why, if I recognized him, could I not remember his name? Why did he sit among us, acting as if he belonged? He stared at Mark and Sarah as they chatted. He laughed when they laughed, smiled when they smiled. I couldn't figure it out. The question burned in my head. How had he, a stranger, joined our little group without any of us noticing something amiss? "Yo, Porter!" Ben pulled me from my thoughts. "Your head up in the clouds or something? I was just telling Justine about our 5th grade teacher. What was his name again?" "Mr. Smith," I said. "Oh yeah, Mr. Smith." I was telling Justine how you could rile that guy up like nobody else. "Remember that time you handed in an assignment printed in yellow ink?" Ben and Justine laughed. "Yeah, I remember," I said. I can still see the steam coming out of his ears. They laughed again, and I joined in half-heartedly. When I glanced the strange man's way, he was watching us, grinning. He was always watching, always on the periphery, never partaking, part of the reason he had flown under the radar. I was struck with the sense that he was studying us. My skin crawled. Ben drained his beer and threw the empty can in the cooler. "Well, I gotta take a leak," he said, and walked into the woods, swallowed up by the dark. "You really know how to push people's buttons when you want to, huh?" Justine said. I shrugged. I was having trouble focusing on the conversation. The weight of the situation, the reality of it, was starting to hit me. A strange man had attached himself to our group, unnoticed. And who the fuck knew what his motivations were? Questions raced through my mind. None I could answer. How had no one else noticed yet? Why had it taken me so long to notice? Was I going insane? Did I have amnesia and forget this one friend of ours? What in the hell was going on here? The strange man stood with jerkiness. "I gotta take a leak," he said. It was the first time I heard him talk. He spoke with an odd lisp. It sounded as if he had to force the words from his throat. He walked with an awkward gait and, like Ben, disappeared behind the dark veil of the trees. No one else flinched. Justine kept talking. "I always loved the long relationship you and Ben have. It was so hard moving cities and leaving all my old friends behind. I mean, I can't complain too much. I wouldn't have met Ben and all you guys otherwise." "Justine, don't you see what's going on here?" "Huh? You're telling me you haven't noticed?" "Notice what, Porter? What are you talking about?" "Who was that guy?" I gestured to the vacated spot the strange man left behind. "Oh, him. He's, She trailed off. She frowned into the fire. I could see her mind ticking over, and her eyes twinged with concern. I knew I wasn't going crazy. "I don't know," she said. "Who is it?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." We stared at each other. "Maybe—" Justine was cut off. An ear-piercing screech came from the woods. It sounded like a shrill, injured cat. A large cat. The sound split the air and cut our conversations short. A blanket of silence fell over the four of us. Only the crackling campfire persisted. The woods were still and quiet. "The fuck was that?" Mark broke the silence. "I don't know," Sarah said. "I've never quite heard an animal like that before." "Sounded like some fucked up mountain lion," Justine said. "You ever heard anything like that before, Porter?" I shook my head. My fingers tingled with adrenaline. Ben was still in the woods, and the strange man was out there with him. Dread filled my gut. "There's no mountain lions out here," Mark said. "It's probably an elk. They can make some creepy sounds," Sarah agreed. Justine bit her lip and scanned the woods. "It's probably okay. I think Mark's right," I said to her, but I wasn't sure I believed it. Mark and Sarah had started up their conversation again when the strange man bumbled out of the woods. They paid him no mind. I was hoping something would have triggered in them by now, but they were oblivious. The strange man took a beer from the cooler. He fumbled with it, struggling with the tab. It was as is, if had never opened a can before. When he finally had it open, he sat, beer in hand, and continued to watch Mark and Sarah, a thin smile on his face. He never did take a sip. I watched him from across the campfire, his head wavering behind the heat. I touched on what made me uneasy about this strange man, aside from the fact he had managed to infiltrate our group without any of us noticing for a long time. He moved with jerkiness and awkwardness, like a newborn animal. Nothing he did was smooth or well-practiced. It made everything he did look like an act, an imitation. I didn't make the connection at the time, but I should have seen this man was not quite human. But at the moment, I wasn't sure what to think. I guess I just thought he was a freak. I considered calling him out. Then and there, I wanted to ask him just what the fuck he was doing. But I'll admit, I was scared. I had visions of this guy being some horrific serial killer, and I didn't know how dangerous he was, or if he was armed. I didn't want to push him into doing something drastic. that got us all killed. As time went by without any sign of Ben, I became convinced the strange man had done something to him. I watched him plotting, planning, and marking his next target. Anger sprouted from my fear, and I started to see red. I needed to stop him. We used an axe to chop firewood for our campfire, and it was leaning against my seat. This man was dangerous. I was sure of it. I convinced myself I needed to do something before another one of us was next. I clutched at the axe's handle. The smooth wood felt reassuring in my hand. Justine touched my arm. "Porter, where's Ben? I'm getting nervous." "It's okay," I lied, patting her hand. "I'm sure everything is okay." I stood with axe in hand. "I'm going to get some more firewood," I announced, more awkwardly than I hoped. Okay, dude," Mark said. "Porter." Justine's voice wavered. Speaking up was a mistake. I had drawn the attention of the strange man. I walked past him, trying to act as nonchalant as possible, but I was never a good actor. He watched me the whole way. He maintained his glare as I reached the perimeter of the woods, and as he looked back, his head rotated around an unnatural distance. That was enough to chill my spine. I was hoping he would turn around to look away and give me an opening, but he never did. I'm not exactly sure what happened next. I never saw him stand up and walk over to me. I never even saw him move a single muscle. But in an instant, he was standing in front of me, inches away from my face. It was as if he teleported. A metallic smell stung my nose. The strange man stunk of blood and copper. The axe trembled in my hand. Any thought of actually using it fled my mind. I locked into place, my skin covered in goosebumps. Power radiated off him. He spoke to me. "Get some firewood," he said in his forced tone, and he smiled wide. At that moment, Ben emerged from the woods. "Ben!" Justine cried. "Jesus!" Ben said, as Justine squeezed him. "Did you guys hear that cat thing?" "We think it was an elk," Mark said. "Where were you? Why did you take so long?" Justine asked. "I guess I wandered too far off and I lost sight of the campfire. Took me a bit to find my way back. For a second I thought I was going to have to freeze my ass off out there alone tonight." The relief washed over my body like a wave, crashing into my muscles. I felt each one relax. At least Ben was safe. I looked for the strange man, but he was gone. He somehow slinked away while I was distracted. He was good at going undetected when he wanted to. My thoughts turned to getting out of there. Even though Ben was unharmed, that guy was still trouble. I started back towards the group and caught the middle of their conversation. "I don't know, actually." "Yeah, who was that guy?" Ben said. "I thought he was with you guys," Sarah said. "Yeah, isn't he your friend?" Mark added. "I thought he drove over with you three." "No," Ben said. "I don't know who he is." The panic spread over everyone's faces. They were finally feeling what I was feeling. The realization had set in. "We need to get out of here," I said, "before he comes back." "Yes, please," Justine said. "We have to leave now. That guy was a freak, right, Porter?" "Yeah," I said. I explained to them how I noticed he was the odd man out when we were sitting around the fire. I explained the odd behavior, and they all agreed the guy was strange and possibly dangerous. None of us could pinpoint exactly when he had joined the group. He had slipped in unnoticed and unaccounted for. It was uncanny. We packed our tents in record time. We trekked the 15 minutes to our cars through dark woods, flashlights in hand. We heard the screech of the elk again. If it was an elk, which I have my doubts about now, and we took some comfort from the fact it sounded farther away. Even so, we picked up our pace for the final stretch of the walk. I felt like I could finally relax behind the wheel and locked doors of my SUV. Justine and Ben sat in the back, while Mark and Sarah followed behind in Mark's beaten-up Ford Laser. We were heading out of the woodland and were planning to shack up in a motel for the night before heading home in the morning. I thought we were free and clear. We wound our way around the dark roads that snaked through woods. I let a smile open up my face when we finally reached the exit road. It was an arrow-straight stretch of asphalt that split through the last few miles of woodland. I pressed on the accelerator. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there, and I think Mark was feeling the same way because he sat close on my rear bumper. I remember thinking, at least we'll have a strange tale to tell after all this. I didn't think it was about to turn into a horror story. The trees and the dashed lines on the road blurred past us. My headlights reached out for the seemingly endless road, and my speedometer needled its way towards 100 mph. I don't know what possessed me to go that fast, and I wish Mark didn't follow my lead. It was a mistake. The strange man appeared from behind a tree. He walked into the middle of my lane. I slammed the brakes. It was too late. The next sequence of events happened so fast, it plays like a slideshow in my mind. The tires screeched, and there was a smell of burning rubber. The strange man folded over my bonnet and got sent flying down the road. He skated across the pavement on his back, moving with such speed it looked as if he was gliding on ice. More tires screeching. Mark flew past in the opposite lane, fishtailing. He fought it, and for a moment I thought he had it saved, but the car hooked right into the trees. The sickening sound of crunching metal reverberated in the air. Mark's car slammed into a tree, driver side first, sending fragments of glass and metal flying. The car bounded off one tree and into another. The front passenger side impacted this time. The front light exploded, and the passenger side cavity caved in, sending a wheel bounding into the woods. The crumpled heap of a car came to a rest. Justine was the first out the door, crying out Sarah's name. Ben went after her, and I followed after him. Everything felt surreal as shock coursed through my body. It was as if I was watching through a screen. I floated over the asphalt as Justine and Ben sprinted towards the steaming wreckage, the crash scene dimly lit by my SUV's one remaining headlight. There are two screams I'll never forget. They imprinted themselves on my brain, and I'll hear their echoes at night, forever. If I happen to get Alzheimer's later in life, I know the last thing to go will be these screams. The first one I heard when I was 13. It came from my mother. It flooded the house, splashing off the walls. I ran out of my room to see her crumpled at the front door with 2 police officers standing by. They had notified her that her eldest son, my brother, had died. The second came from Justine when she saw what was waiting for us in that Ford Laser. Mark was unrecognizable. He was a shattered mess of bone, skin, and blood, melded and intertwined with the crumpled steel. Sarah was blinking slowly, her breathing labored, her one arm shattered, broken in too many places to count, her legs crushed at knees from the front of the car, which crumpled back into her leg space. Her legs would have been flat if I could see them. Justine turned away and fell to her knees, face buried in her hands, shoulders heaving. Ben tried to comfort her, but he had to turn away and throw up off the side of the road. I pulled out my phone and struggled to dial 911. With my fingers shaking, I kept pressing the wrong numbers. My voice was small and distant as I explained what happened to the operator. She told me to stay on the line, but as I looked down the road, I dropped my phone. The strange man was standing there. His grin reached from ear to ear, showing a grandstand of teeth. His shoulders shrugged up and down, as if he was laughing. In fact, the fucker was laughing. If I were not in shock, I would have gone after him right then and there. I would have torn his heart, if he has one, right from its chest. But all I could do was stare, mouth agape, struggling to keep the tears behind my eyes. The strange man started for the woods. I watched him go, and I watched him change. I saw it. I know I did. This was no illusion, no trick of the mind. This was real. I saw him shapeshift. I saw its true form. We were not dealing with something human that night. After countless hours of research, I believe I saw what others have called the goatman. Its horns stuck out unevenly from its head. Its grinning snout bared rows of sharp teeth, and walking upright, like a man with an awkward gait, it vanished into the shrouded woods. It has been 8 months since that night. I've only seen my friends a handful of times since then. Our relationships have shattered and are left in ruin. All we are now to each other is a stark reminder of that night. Mark is dead. Sarah survived, but as a triple amputee, Justine and Ben broke up, and here I am, rugged with a scraggly beard and uncut hair after spending every sleepless night researching the monstrosity I saw that night, the goatman. I'm going back to those woods. So help me God. I'm going back. I'm coming for the goatman, and I'm not stopping until one of us is dead. Killed those people, that she just snapped, that she's a bully breed and broke into the cabin and mauled them. I'm facing charges for the deaths of the family who were staying there. What happened was a tragedy, but whatever killed them wasn't my dog. It's still out there, up in northern Minnesota, on that small, picturesque lake where we rented the cabin. I hope this warning reaches people. To those who believe I'm responsible, Bazooka would never have done such a thing. She was a good dog. I know she has an aggressive name, but that's because it's the name she came with when I adopted her from the rescue group. She was an untrained pit lab mix, black with a white muzzle and paws, and she was like a wrecking ball on 4 legs with the propulsion of a rocket. I couldn't change her name because after a month of me trying to call her Beverly, she still only answered to Bazooka. But what she lacked in intellect, she made up for in affection. Every night, she crawled onto my bed, all 70 lbs of her, and then after me pushing her off a few times, eventually, I'd give up and let her stay. And any time I opened my eyes, I'd find her muzzle almost in my face, her dark eyes gazing into mine, like she was memorizing every feature. Bazooka was everything to me, and I just, Sorry for going on. I miss her. Anyway, so about the cabins, we had a rental for the weekend. See, my friend Jake and I both like board games, and sometimes we got together with this couple, Ray and Rashida, who are also board game geeks. Jake was always talking about how it would be fun to have a weekend board game getaway at a cabin. Ray and Rashida were into the idea, and I agreed, as long as I could bring my dog. So we rented this lakeshore cabin that shares the beach with a neighboring cabin and a couple houses across the water. Like a postcard, kayaks and canoes docked for our use, a grill, fire pit, woodpile, spacious too, with a balcony, deck, and bedrooms upstairs, as well as in the basement. Perfect for a gaming getaway. That first afternoon, we cooked hot dogs and veggie burgers out on the grill and played board games on the balcony table. The only downside was when I went out to take my dog for a walk and noticed 2 boys down by the water, one of them peeing off the dock into the lake, the other ripping up a pool noodle and throwing pieces at ducks and laughing when they tried to eat it. On my way back from walking in the woods, the same 2 kids, now dressed, had guns slung over their shoulders as they headed out into the trees. Who lets children run around the woods with guns? They couldn't have been more than 12 years old. I mean, I guess people out in rural Minnesota do that kind of thing. For me, coming from the city, it was pretty alarming. I decided from then on I'd keep my dog on a leash. I just didn't want to risk her being near those boys whose behavior was so disrespectful to nature and animals. But I didn't let them sour my evening. After our next round of board games, we started up a fire and sat around it, roasting marshmallows and drinking. We sat like that under the stars, just talking, and it was the closest I'd felt to anyone in a long time. The next morning, I woke up at the butt crack of dawn because Bazooka was whining to go out, and I dragged myself up and stumbled out in a robe, opening the door for her and forgetting for a moment that I'd resolved to keep her leashed. As the morning air hit me, I woke up enough to go out after her and found her sniffing around the docks. I frowned because that's when I noticed the kayaks out on the water, but nobody in them, presumably the kids again, causing mischief. But at least it was quiet for now. In the neighboring cabin, took Bazooka back in after she finished her business. Once everyone was up, we went out on the lake for a canoe trip, with Bazooka leaping out into the water and paddling around, and then nearly capsizing us when she tried to climb back in. After a lunch of homemade pizza, we spent the afternoon back at our board games until the sun lowered in the sky. Ray and Rashida wanted s'mores, but since we didn't have marshmallows and chocolate, they decided to drive into town. That left Jake and me at the bonfire sipping beers and watching the stars come out in the deepening twilight. We were so busy marveling at all the stars you could see out here that we didn't hear or notice anything until Bazooka's deep, throaty growl alerted us. All the hairs on my neck stood on end. I looked out blearily across the fire. By now, I'd had enough beer to be buzzed. And beyond the flames stood one of the kids, the younger one, 11-ish. He was dripping wet as if he'd come out of the water, all but naked in swim trunks that had come untied and were loosely slipping down his hips to the point of immodesty. "Jesus fuck," Jake gasped, his big hand going to his chest. He sputtered on his beer. "Almost gave me a heart attack, kid." Bazooka stood a few feet from the kid, head down, hackles raised, that low growl still deep in her throat. "Bazooka," I called, and she glanced at me, but kept growling until I snapped her name louder, and she reluctantly came to my side. But still, that rumble sounded from her chest. "Kid, everything okay?" Jake was asking. He heaved himself up and went over and snapped his fingers in front of the boy's face. "Kid? Kid!" The boy's head slowly turned, glazed eyes lifting to look at Jake. A line of drool dribbled from the boy's lower lip, silvery in the firelight. "Is he all right?" I said. "I'd better get him to his parents. Maybe he's having some kind of episode." Jake clapped a hand on the boy's shoulder and steered him along the grass, onto the dirt pathway leading over to the other cabin. I was glad Jake took him. I didn't want to admit it, but I was fully creeped out by the kid's 1,000-yard stare, as well as by Bazooka's behavior. She'd never been a bright dog. Sliding glass doors were impossible for her. She always rammed right into them. And she was equally mystified by doggy doors. Her playmate Rocky had a doggy door at his house, and every time he went through the flap, she stared afterwards, like it was magic. But she had good instincts, and she sensed something definitely wrong with that boy. So did I. If only I'd listened to the feeling in my gut. The night was nearly pitch black by the time tires crunched in the gravel. Ray and Rashida were back. I heaved a sigh of relief because Jake still wasn't back from the other cabin, and I was getting concerned. Music played from their car, and as they stepped out with bags of groceries, I called to them and explained that Jake had brought the boy to the neighboring cabin and hadn't come back. Ray and Rashida peppered me with questions. Was he sick? Did you call an ambulance? What kind of symptoms did he seem to have? After a brief discussion, I locked up Bazooka, and the three of us made our way over to the neighboring cabin. Moonlight shone down on us, casting the world in a silvery light as our footsteps crunched in the gravel. It was eerie quiet, the only sound Bazooka's barking, more and more distant. I heard her pawing against the glass door. Good thing she didn't know how to use the doggy door, or she'd have come charging after us. Though honestly, I kinda wished I'd brought her. Even with 3 of us, I was anxious, a pit of dread in my gut, an instinctive dread that I wish now I'd listened to. When we knocked on the door, it swung in slightly. The cabin was pitch dark inside. "Hello?" called Ray. "Hello!" Silence. We shined our flashlights around. The cabin was nearly identical to ours, but the floor had a scattering of clothes and a towel. Seems the boys just threw their stuff down wherever they went. Ray fumbled along and found a lamp, switched it on. Her shriek made me jump. For an instant, I swear my soul left my body. Then I saw what had startled her. There, standing in the center of the cabin's rustic living room, was Jake. He was swaying, his lips slack and eyes sort of wobbling to and fro. And then he collapsed. He was a mountain of a man, and the impact shook the floor with a resounding thud. Somewhere below, I thought I heard an echo, or another thud, like someone else moving. Jake. Ray was next to him in an instant, checking his pupils, his breathing. He was breathing slowly but regularly, his eyes still open, though he did nothing except look slowly at whoever was talking. Ray mostly, though his eyes moved to me when I said, "I'm calling 911. I'm going to look around and see if I can find anyone," said Rashida. I don't remember the next moments very well, just that I was on the phone with the dispatcher, trying to explain the strange sequence of events and the symptoms of the boy, and now Jake, while Ray was speaking at the same time, trying to talk him through whatever he was experiencing, trying to ascertain what was wrong with him. And then, just as the dispatcher was telling me how soon help could get here, a scream rang from above. Then rapid footsteps. Rashida rushed down, shrieking, "A woman!" There's a woman up there with her face ripped open and blood everywhere. Even as she rushed down from upstairs, I saw the figure coming up from the opposite direction, ascending the stairs from the basement and lurking behind her. The boy, still clad only in his swim trunks, had dripping hands and red smeared across his face. I raised my arm to point, gasping, and Rashida saw my expression and turned and screamed as the boy lunged at her. Ray saw him in that moment too and shrieked. The boy knocked Rashida to the floor, shockingly strong and fast. He bared his bloody teeth. I think he'd have tried to eat her face the same as his mother, but at that moment, a black blur shot out of nowhere. 70 lulbees of ferocious pit bull slammed into the boy's scrawny body, knocking him off her. Apparently, in this moment of crisis, Bazooka had figured out the flap door. "Run!" I shouted. "Run!" I yanked Rashida toward the front door. Ray hesitated, still kneeling over Jake, but there was no way she could lift him. Even with 3 of us, we'd have needed time to move him, and we didn't have that. She rushed after us. The 3 of us burst out into the night. "Bazooka, come, come!" I shouted. But the snarling sounds from the boy and dog continued inside. Ray and Rashida dashed into their car. "Come on, come on!" Ray called to me. "I'll be right behind you." "I can't leave Jake and my dog." "Go, get help!" I shouted. The tires squealed over the gravel as they took off, leaving me alone in the gravel road under the moonlight. No company but the 911 dispatcher's tinny voice still on the phone. As soon as they were gone, it struck me how foolish I was, how exposed and helpless. and most of all, how loud the dispatcher's voice was, shooting questions at me. I hung up the phone and rushed into our cabin and shut the door, hurried to find my keys. My keys. Where were my fucking keys? I finally found them on the coffee table by the fireplace and turned to rush to the door and froze. There, just outside on the deck, standing in plain view through the glass sliding doors, was Jake, just standing there, staring in, his eyes sweeping to and fro, like he was looking for someone. I ducked down behind the sofa and crawled toward the door, froze at the sound of the deck door sliding open. He'd entered the cabin. Was he feeling better? The urge to call out nearly brought words to my lips, but this time my instincts overrode the impulse. I stayed quiet. Jake's heavy footsteps took him across the room. He wandered upstairs. Should I call to him? And then I had an idea, a way to be sure. My iPad was downstairs in the basement. I tugged out my phone, shifting it to silent mode, and I called my iPad, heard the jingle from my phone calling it, and then heavy thuds. Jake came barreling down the stairs, charging at top speed, knocking over a potted plant at the bottom of the stairs and heedlessly crashing down toward the basement. Not a normal reaction, not at all. Panic sent sirens through my brain. I couldn't open the front door without him hearing the latch. The sliding door to the deck was still open. As silently as possible, I slipped out and rushed along the moonlit dark out to the gravel. My car was parked a ways up the hill, close to the stacks of firewood. Each step away from the cabin, I breathed a little easier until I heard a soft crunch on the gravel ahead of me. I shined my phone's light. There, standing in front of my car, was Bazooka. Her head hung low, droopy. She listed to one side. Her mouth hung open, and her eyes stared at my flashlight. No, 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 not you. Not you, too. A wave of terror and exhaustion hit me. I was so sure I was doomed. She's so fast, there was no outrunning her. But even more than feeling afraid, I was upset. I took a step toward her and only stopped myself at the last second. Bazooka, I whispered. Her snout lifted, and then to my shock, her tail moved, a slow wag, side to side. Bazooka, are you still in there? I drew a shaky breath as I waited for her to attack me, and when she didn't, I mustered myself and said in my sternest voice, "Sit." For a long moment, she stared. Then her haunches wavered. She sat. "Stay," I said. I walked around her and got into my car and looked at her. She was watching me, her jaws still slack in that same way as the others had been. Her eyes following me. I could feel myself tearing up as I said, "Good dog," and her tail thumped, and then I drove away. I still don't know what was in those woods. The body of the younger kid in swim trunks had Bazooka's teeth marks from when she defended us, and because of that, they apparently concluded she must have been responsible for mauling the woman upstairs, and a man who must have been the kid's father. The oldest boy's body was not found, and Jake's death was listed as heart attack, and Bazooka is still missing. To be honest, that's been the hardest part. I know I shouldn't say that when human lives were lost, But losing my beloved dog has been worse than the blame, worse than the charges I'm facing now. I wonder if there is some part of her that remembers, even now, if she's still in those woods, running wild with her empty eyes, running and listening, waiting to hear her name be called again. Oh, I ain't scared of nothing. That's what I yelled to my brother as I slammed the door to my car shut. Things have, changed since then. I've changed. I remember his smirk, how he held out my jacket, the way he spouted off an endless list of things I should be scared of. Skinwalkers and witches and werewolves. Oh my. He presented each one as reason after reason of why this idea was stupid, saying I still had time to flake out, save face. I remember rolling my eyes, snatching my jacket from his grasp, sliding into my car and yelling that I'm not scared before speeding away towards the darkening outline of the mountains. They stood out stark against the setting sun like teeth. Boy, how I wish I listened. I was wrong. He was right. I'm fucking scared. Let me back up a bit. It all started about 2 days ago. I was out of my mind, depressed, could barely get out of bed. Thought about chucking myself in front of cars, over bridges, off buildings, just dying. I thought about dying all the time, and enough was enough. One of the few friends I had suggested that I try solo camping said it might clear my mind, that the wilderness, the silence, the solitude would do me good. He gave me a list of spots, some more isolated than the others. I decided on the most isolated one, which was about a 3-hour hike from the last campsite, far out in the Rocky Mountain National Forest. I remember his face, the surprise, the acceptance. You sure? His voice cracked. I nodded, saying nothing. Okay, I mean, it's a pretty secluded place, especially for a first-time camper. He shrugged. But then again, it's a beautiful spot. It'll definitely give you some perspective. And the night sky out there is insane. I thanked him and turned to leave, but he spoke up again. Hey, don't let the forest spook you, okay? A word of advice from a veteran. Don't go out at night no matter what you hear. You might get totally fucked by a bear or lion. The drive up the mountains was strangely soothing. The gently curving roads that wove their way through the trees and up the rocks were exciting to navigate, and soon my mind was eased into a peaceful contemplation. I had decided to forego electronics this trip, even going as far as securing my phone in my glove box. I wanted to be completely free of all that shit, able to focus on the now rather than ruminate about the past or fear the future. I would be gone for 5 days and 4 nights, enough time for me to, hopefully, recuperate and reassess my life and what I was doing with it. I soon descended into Estes Park and drove through the picturesque town towards RMNP, willing myself not to stay at the Stanley instead. I found the entrance to the park with ease and continued to the closest lot to my campsite. Night was now falling, and I silently cursed myself for leaving so late. I sat in my car for a good 30 minutes before deciding that it would be too risky hiking 3 hours in near pitch black. There were 4 other tents set up in the lot I was at with room for one more, and soon I had my own tent set up. That night passed comfortably. I was surrounded by chatting, laughing people, and unruly but happy children who ran round and round screaming. A few of them offered me roasted hot dogs and s'mores and beers, and I filled my belly, smiling. I was rolled up in my sleeping bag before the last light from the dying embers faded away. The second night didn't go so smoothly. I woke up late, well rested, but still groggy, and took my time repacking my tent. I hesitated at first, wondering if I should just stay there. But at 3 p.m., another family showed up with proof they had reserved the site. So I gathered my things and set off, and immediately got lost. Navigating by map and compass for the first time and alone is a lot harder than it sounds. And the trees can be misleading, can turn you around, make you think you're on the right path when really you're miles from where you're supposed to be. Instead of taking me 3 hours to get to the site, it took me nearly twice that time, and I was swiftly losing what little light was left in the day. Finally, I found the site. But before I breathed a sigh of relief, I haphazardly set up my tent, building a small fire in front. It was dark now, and I was jumpy. Every sound I heard was seemingly magnified, every shadow cast by the dim light of the fire. A menace, spooked. I crawled into the tent and curled up in my bag, trying to will myself into sleep. After a while, I was dozing, about to drift off, when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of a foot crunching outside. My eyes shot open, and I reached for my flashlight, but didn't turn it on. I waited. I heard the sound again. Someone or something was definitely walking around my tent. It sounded like whatever they was trying to be quiet, stealthy. That went on for hours in inconsistent bursts until I finally decided it was an animal, scavenging for the scraps or inspecting my tent. By dawn, I was dozing again, and the noise had finally stopped. I told myself I would sleep for an hour or two, giving myself time to rest up. I woke up disoriented, exhausted, and started to panic before remembering I was out camping and that I needed to start hiking back now. But when I exited the tent, I saw that the sun was already setting. To say I was upset would be an understatement. I hesitated for a moment, trying to decide what to do. I wanted to go home. I wanted to leave, see how far I could get out there. But deep down, I knew I'd instantly get lost and probably end up in a worse situation. So I began collecting as much wood as I could to build a big-ass fire and prepared to hunker down for the night. The light from the sun seemed to disappear unfathomably fast. The third night was, pretty problematic. I sat awake in my tent for hours after the sun went down, waiting. I'd left the fire going for as long as the wood lasted. I know this isn't kosher for camping, but I was improvising, and I was absolutely terrified. The darkness around me seemed to crush the light from the fire, making it seem small, pathetic, a tiny candle in a sea of shadows. For hours, I sat there, listening, afraid. Finally, I realized I was just being ridiculous, that what I had heard the night before was nothing to fear, that my subconscious, my monkey mind, was just playing tricks on me, keeping me alert for no reason. So I bundled myself up and laid down, and I heard it, softly at first, a footstep, then 2, 3, growing louder, bolder. I sat up and felt my eyes increase to the size of saucers, and my breath quickened. What was that? I had to know. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't. I was operating purely off of fear. I heard the noise. It sounded like something running and running around and around my tent. Suddenly, the side of my tent pushed in, as if someone was slapping it from the outside. "Hey!" I yelled, scared out of my wits. "Hey! I'm awake! I'm in here!" I tried to stand, tripping myself up in my sleeping bag in the process, and slammed into the front of the tent. Scrambling up, I swiftly unzipped the flap and ran outside with a red-tinted flashlight. I saw a shape scurry away and followed. And there, standing at the edge of the firelight, barely visible, was the silhouette of a person. They were standing with their back towards me. Their arms were hanging in strange positions by their sides, their head pointed straight away from me. I took a step towards them, and a branch cracked underneath me. The sound seemed to startle the person, and they turned their head ever so slightly. "Hey," I said again. "What the fuck, man?" And it boiled up, a sound that crescendoed into a scream. It was laughter, and it echoed around me, rattling around in my skull. I ran, leaping into my tent, zipping it up behind me, curling into my sleeping bag, crying, and the world around me exploded, or rather, imploded. The walls of the tent shook, like hundreds of hands were slapping it, poking it, punching it. Outside, what sounded like dozens of people running around shattered the silence. I don't know how or when I fell asleep. I think I fainted. Either way, I woke up the next day to a reddish glow encompassing my surroundings. I sat up and ran outside, looking around for proof of what I had heard. But there was nothing, no footprints, handprints, or any disturbance at all. "Fuck this," I muttered to myself, throwing my things chaotically into my bag. I would leave today. In the dark, I couldn't stay another night here. I was just starting to unpole the tent when I heard it, a sound in the distance, perhaps carried to me by the wind, which was picking up around me. "Help me! Help me! Please, oh God, help me!" No. I reacted more out of instinct than logic and began running towards the sound before realizing that I, in no way, was in a place to help whoever was screaming. Still, I tried to locate the source of the sound, following the voice for about 30 minutes. "Where are you?" I yelled, looking around me through the maze of trees. "I'm here. Where are you?" Quickly, the screams descended into a deep, unsettling laughter. Scared out of my mind, I turned and ran back the way I came. By some miracle, I made it back to my site, grabbed my pack, and uprooted the poles of the tent, thinking that I would just roll it up and carry it back instead of taking the time to fold it neatly and shove it into its bag. Around me, the mountains loomed up like fangs, like I was about to be swallowed whole by a monstrous mouth. As I pulled each pole, the tent fell a little, but it was only on the third pole of out 6 that I realized it wasn't falling fully flat. Confused, I peered into the tent and reeled in horror, too afraid to even scream. There was someone sitting inside, but not just anyone. It was me, sitting there, pallor and bone thin, a too wide grin plastered on my face. A single droplet of blood rolled down from each eye, which, instead of having green irises, were totally, wholly black. I jumped back, tripping over my own feet. Laughter rose up around me, and as I scrambled up, I saw my hand that was not my hand reach out from the tent, followed swiftly by the other, then the head. My face that was not my face looked up at me, still smiling, then laughed again. I screamed, I stood, I ran, and I ran. I didn't even know if I was running the right way. I couldn't even use the sun anymore for guidance since it had almost fully set. I ran without looking where I was going. I kept looking behind me to see if that thing was following me. I could feel the trees scratching me up, pushing against me, like they were trying to hold me back, hold me still, until that thing came for me. Suddenly, a light flashed in my face, and I ran into something solid, something black, something that wrapped around me. I instantly cowered, hiding my face in my hands. Shit! Oh, please, God. No, no, no. I heard my own voice, terrified, shaking. Hey, calm down. It's okay. You just scared me. Calm down. What's wrong? I looked up and into the worried gray eyes of a human face. The face of a middle-aged man, to be exact. He was holding me up. The flashlight he was using lay fallen at our feet, creating strange shadows behind us. I looked back, fearful of what I might see, but there was nothing, only trees swinging slowly in the slight breeze. Hey, he said again. Was that you? Screaming. I came out here to check. I couldn't speak. I was too terrified. I shook my head. Were you camping out there alone? He asked, letting me go and bending down to retrieve the flashlight. I nodded, then began crying. Hey, it's okay. It can be spooky out here. Come on, my car's right over there. He gestured with his head back behind him. I wiped my nose and blinked, finally finding my voice. Who are you? He glanced at me, then away. I'm, a park ranger. But he didn't look like one. He was wearing a smooth black suit, black tie, and white shirt, and his shoes were polished leather. not hiking boots. "Come on," he said again, taking my pack and swinging it onto his back. As he did so, his jacket flapped slightly, and I saw what looked like a Sig Sauer handgun strapped to his belt. "Okay," I said, looking back behind me again. "How did you find me?" He shrugged. "Good hearing." We entered a small clearing, and I saw a matte black SUV with tinted windows, headlights flaring, engine idling, parked in the middle of it. He popped the trunk and threw my bag in as I climbed into the passenger side seat. He climbed in the driver's seat and asked me where he should take me. I told him the lot number, and we were on our way. After a few moments, he flipped the cubby between us open and pulled out a bag. "Corn nuts?" he asked, holding out the bag to me. I took it gratefully and began chomping away. I licked my fingers, then looked back at him. "So, are you really a ranger?" He looked at me, then back to the road. But still I stared at him, transfixed. He looked exhausted, his wood-colored hair disheveled and dirty from the forest. The SUV jerked to a sudden stop, and the man let out a slow, low breath. His eyes narrowed, and he looked over at me, then back to the dirt trail in front of us. I followed his gaze, feeling the fear churning up inside me, and there, in the middle of the road, was me. The me that was not me. Its limbs hung limply, as if they were broken, and that sickly smile was still plastered across the face. It waved. The man looked back at me, then back at the thing that was not me, then back at me. I met his gaze. "I don't get paid enough for this shit," the man muttered, before slamming his foot on the accelerator straight towards the thing. We both felt the impact. The car bounced over the body, and the man kept driving. But around us, in between the trees, stirred into the darkness, laughter boiled up, manic and persistent. We reached the lot in silence, bathed in the first light of the rising sun. The man beside me seemed to be deep in thought, distracted. I was still scared, but hopeful that whatever that thing was, it was now dead, crushed by the car, or at least so badly wounded that it would soon succumb. The SUV slowed to a stop, and the man popped the trunk and hopped out. He walked to the back and grabbed my pack as I jumped out. He handed to me, and I took it, then thanked him for everything. "No problem," he said, "all in a day's or night's work." His lips quivered as if he was about to smile. I turned to leave, but he spoke up again. "Hey." I turned to face him again. "If you ever want to talk about what you, saw, or, just talk, call me." He held out a card. I took it and looked down at it. It was matte black and only had a single number written on it. There was no area code. Then I began, but I heard a door slam and looked up. The man was already back in his car. He waved at me, then sped off back the way we had come, back towards that thing. I shoved the card in my pocket, climbed into my car, and left, breathing a sigh of relief. I still haven't told anyone about what happened, even when they asked why I refused to go camping ever again. I just shrug and tell them it wasn't my thing, that I prefer a warm bed and the bustling sounds of a busy city. Every so often, though, I'll pull out the card, my fingers lingering over my phone, wondering if I should call, wondering who the man really was, and if he'd really be able to explain what happened to me.